The champagne had gone flat in her glass hours ago, but Victoria Ashford hadn't noticed. She sat in the penthouse suite of Mercy General Hospital's private wing, surrounded by leather furniture and abstract art that cost more than most people's homes. Yet she'd never felt more helpless in her life. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan glittered like a jewelry box she could no longer open. Nothing money could buy seemed to matter anymore. Not the experimental treatments, not the world-renowned specialists flown in from 3 continents, not the cutting-edge equipment that transformed her children's hospital rooms into something resembling a science fiction movie. Her twins, Emma and Ethan, lay motionless in their beds just down the hall, their bright futures stolen by a drunk driver on a rainy October night 6 months ago. Victoria had built an empire from nothing. At 42, she'd turned a small tech startup into a billion-dollar corporation, earning her a spot on every prestigious list that mattered. She'd negotiated with presidents, outmaneuvered ruthless competitors, and revolutionized an entire industry through sheer determination and brilliance. But none of that prepared her for this. All her power, all her connections, all her wealth couldn't make her 12-year-old children walk again. The doctors had been brutally honest during the last consultation. Complete spinal cord injuries, permanent paralysis from the waist down. The words had hit her like physical blows, each syllable chipping away at the foundation of hope she'd desperately tried to maintain. She'd fired 3 of them for their pessimism, hired new ones who promised different outcomes, but the results never changed. Emma's bright eyes that once sparkled with dreams of becoming a dancer now stared at the ceiling. With hollow acceptance, Ethan, who'd been the star of his soccer team, had stopped speaking almost entirely. Victoria threw herself into finding solutions. With the same intensity she'd once applied to hostile takeovers, she funded research laboratories, offered million-dollar grants to anyone who could promise progress, and even explored experimental procedures in countries with looser medical regulations. Nothing worked. The failure was suffocating. For the first time in her life, Victoria Ashford's money and influence meant absolutely nothing. On a cold February evening, she sat in the hospital's meditation garden, a space she'd ironically funded too, years earlier during a charity event she'd barely paid attention to. The donation had been a tax write-off, another line item on her accountant's spreadsheet. Now, surrounded by the carefully maintained plants and the gentle sound of a water fountain, she wondered if she'd ever experienced real peace, before tragedy forced her to seek it. "Beautiful night, isn't it?" A voice interrupted her thoughts. "Even with all this city light, you can still see a few stars if you look hard enough." Victoria turned to find an older man in a janitor's uniform standing near the garden entrance, emptying a trash bin with methodical care. She'd probably walked past him 100 times without ever really seeing him. He had kind eyes, the sort that crinkled at the corners, and hands weathered by decades of honest work. "I suppose," Victoria replied, her voice hollow. She wasn't in the mood for small talk, especially not with the help. But the janitor didn't leave. Instead, he sat on a nearby bench, pulling out a thermos of coffee and pouring himself a cup with the unhurried movements of someone who'd learned that rushing through life meant missing it entirely. "I'm Marcus," he said simply. "Been working here 23 years. Seen a lot of people come through those doors. Some leave happy, some don't, but they all got one thing in common." Despite herself, Victoria was curious. "What's that?" "They all think they're alone in their suffering." Marcus took a slow sip of coffee. "Your twins, Emma and Ethan, beautiful kids. I clean their rooms every night around 9. Ethan told me about his soccer team last week. First time I'd heard him speak in months." Victoria's throat tightened. "He spoke to you? About his favorite goal? The one he scored at the state championship last year? Kid's got quite a memory." Marcus smiled softly. "Emma, she asked me about my daughter. Wanted to know if she liked to dance. Turns out my daughter was a lot like Emma. Same dreams, same fire." "Was?" Victoria caught the past tense immediately. Marcus nodded, a shadow passing over his face. "Meningitis, 20 years ago this March. She was 10. He paused, letting the weight of that loss settle between them. Doctors said there was nothing they could do. And back then, I didn't have money for second opinions or experimental treatments. I was just a janitor. Still am." Victoria felt shame wash over her. She'd been so consumed by her own pain that she'd forgotten other people had experienced devastating loss too, probably the people she passed every single day without acknowledging their existence. "I'm sorry," she whispered and meant it. "Thank you." Marcus poured a second cup of coffee and offered it to her. She accepted, surprised by the gesture's simple kindness. "After Lily died, I was angry. Angry at God, angry at the world, angry at myself. I quit this job, drank too much, pushed away everyone who tried to help. My wife nearly left me. Then one day, a friend told me something that changed everything." "What did he say?" "She said that suffering either builds walls or breaks them down, and I got to choose which." Marcus looked up at the few visible stars. "I chose to let it break down my walls. Started really seeing people again. Started understanding that everyone walking through this hospital is carrying something heavy. Some carry it better than others, but we're all struggling with something." They sat in silence for a while, sipping coffee under the winter sky. Victoria felt something shift inside her, like a door she'd kept locked was finally opening a crack. "I don't know how to help them anymore," she admitted. "I've tried everything money can buy." "Maybe that's the problem," Marcus said gently. "Maybe what they need can't be bought." Over the following weeks, something extraordinary began to happen. Marcus started spending time with Emma and Ethan beyond his janitorial duties. He'd bring a guitar and play old folk songs, teaching Ethan basic chords the boy could manage with his hands. He'd tell Emma stories about Lily's dance recitals, and the two would watch old ballet performances on a tablet, with Emma providing commentary like a seasoned critic. Victoria watched from the doorway, initially skeptical, but gradually moved by the genuine connection forming. Marcus never treated the children like victims. He didn't speak in the careful, overly gentle tones the specialists used. He joked with them, challenged them, and most importantly, he listened. One evening, Marcus wheeled both twins to the physical therapy room after hours. Victoria followed, concerned about what he was planning without medical supervision. "What's going on?" she demanded. "With your permission," Marcus said respectfully, "I'd like to show them something." He proceeded to teach the children wheelchair dancing, not therapeutic exercises designed by specialists, but actual dancing. He played music from his phone and demonstrated moves he'd learned from YouTube. Videos practiced in his apartment every night for 2 weeks. The movements were simple at first. Just timing pushes to the rhythm, spinning in circles, coordinating movements with each other. But then something magical happened. Emma started laughing. Really laughing, the sound echoing through the empty therapy room like music. Victoria hadn't heard in months. Ethan joined in, and soon both children were trying increasingly elaborate moves, failing spectacularly and laughing even harder. Victoria's hand flew to her mouth as tears streamed down her face. Her children were experiencing joy again, not the forced happiness they'd tried to show her, but real, genuine joy. Marcus caught her eye and smiled. "They're not broken, Ms. Ashford. They're just different now. And different can still be beautiful." That night, something fundamental shifted in Victoria's perspective. She'd been so focused on fixing her children, on restoring what was lost, that she'd failed to see who they were becoming. She'd been grieving their old lives instead of helping them build new ones. She increased funding for adaptive sports programs at the hospital. She hired designers to create fashionable, functional clothing for wheelchair users. She partnered with tech companies to develop better mobility devices. But more than that, she started really seeing people again, the way Marcus did. Every janitor, every nurse. Emma discovered wheelchair dance as a genuine passion, eventually competing in national championships. Ethan became an advocate for adaptive sports programs in schools, his voice finding new purpose. They would never walk again, but they learned to soar in different ways. 2 years later, Victoria stood in that same meditation garden, this time at a dedication ceremony. The hospital was unveiling a new adaptive rehabilitation wing, funded entirely by her foundation. At her insistence, it was named the Lily Marcus Center for Adaptive Excellence. Marcus stood beside her, visibly uncomfortable with the attention, but glowing with pride. The twins had insisted he attend, threatening to boycott the ceremony if he didn't. "You gave me my children back," Victoria told him, her voice thick with emotion. "Not by fixing them, but by helping me see they were never broken." Marcus shook his head. "I just reminded you that the most powerful, thing in the world isn't money or influence. It's seeing people, really seeing them and treating them like they matter. Because they do. Every single one of us. As the ceremony concluded and journalists swarmed for quotes, Victoria watched Emma and Ethan perform an impromptu wheelchair dance routine, their movements synchronized and joyful. She thought about the person she'd been 2 years ago, so focused on power and success that she'd forgotten what it meant to be human. Sometimes the impossible isn't a miracle that defies medical science. Sometimes it's something much simpler and infinitely more profound. It's a janitor with a kind heart who sees potential where specialists see limitations. It's choosing to break down walls instead of building them higher. It's understanding that our value doesn't come from what we can do, but from who we are and who we choose to see in others. Victoria had learned that the most important transformations don't happen in operating rooms or research laboratories. They happen in quiet moments of genuine human connection, in meditation gardens under starlit skies, and in the simple act of one person choosing to see another's humanity and respond with love.